How's everybody doing? I'm Farhad with TRC. Thanks so much for the opportunity to share some of our new construction cost effectiveness results with you guys. Let's dive right into it. So we defined about 4 different measure packages for the non-residential buildings. Efficiency only packages, solar PV, plus battery, that's one package. We didn't run them individually. All electric designs, including costs associated with natural gas infrastructure and electrical infrastructure if that needs to be increased. And those designs, we asked around the building community for what's the appropriate non-residential all electric alternative to a mixed fuel conventional building. We received costs for these packages from local contractors and where appropriate other sources. And then we ran building simulations on these measure packages. We worked in collaboration with EnergySoft. They're the developers of Energy Pro, which is a widely used compliance software by the building community. The engine's based on the January release of CBEC-COM, and it has greenhouse gas emissions factors built in, so we just snagged those out. And as Bill had to describe during his presentation, we used time-dependent valuation for CC's methodology, as well as on-bill time of use rates to determine cost effectiveness. We layered on each of these measure packages in the following way. So we first started with the mixed fuel minimum. That's the baseline for all of the others, of all these other packages that we're comparing. So for the mixed fuel home, we started with energy efficiency only, the measure packages here, and then we layered on PV on top of that for the second package for the mixed fuel. And then we removed these two and just added high efficiency preemptive appliances. So for those that may not be aware, Department of Energy has equipment efficiency standards that cannot be exceeded by a local code without being federally preemptive or legally challenged in some sort of way. So we just kind of wanted to see how high you can get with those preemptive packages. So then we looked at the all-electric building. We had our first scenario for all-electric be a federal code minimum, and that's basically swapping out the mixed fuel gas appliances for all-electric. And then adding, and on top of that, we added efficiency measures, the same package as above. Added on PV and battery, same sizes as above. And then looked at federal preemptive versions of those appliances again. All right, so there's a lot here. I'm gonna walk you through it, but I think the takeaway with this is that every building that we looked at is different. They each have their own specific quirks about them. So first with the medium office, it's about a 50,000 square foot building, 3 stories. And then sorry, I probably shouldn't have put ACM here, but ACM this is basically the state's baseline. What is the baseline comparison? We, for that medium office, we're looking at rooftop systems with a VAV hot water reheat, a couple central gas boilers in the basement. When we look at what we want to convert that to as an all-electric system was a VAV with electric resistance reheat. This was the most viable option, most cost-effective option that we determined through our outreach with the building community. It's a little simpler with the DHW system. The baseline and the all-electric are already aligned, so we don't need to do anything there. They're both electric resistance storage. They're very low hot water demand types of buildings. Next prototype we looked at was a medium retail. It's 25,000 square feet and 1 story. This has just a smattering of rooftop systems. There's no VAVs anywhere throughout the building. So when we looked at the all electric, all we had to do was change the gas furnaces to heat pumps. Pretty simple. And again, the hot water system's already resistant, so we didn't have to touch that. Our last prototype was definitely different. It's a small hotel, 40,000 square feet, 4 stories, 78 guest rooms. And it has both non-residential and residential spaces inside. The non-residential space is served by a VAV hot water reheat system with central gas boilers. The residential guest rooms are served per the proposed 2019 baseline with single zone, direct expansion, air conditioning systems, and gas furnaces in each guest room. That's inclusive of flue and natural gas piping to every single guest room. The proposed all-electric system was again changing the VAV to resistance, and then in the residential side, we installed packaged terminal heat pumps essentially. And the hot water system, the non-res is still electric resistance. We're not changing that. But on the res side, the central gas storage recirculation system is the baseline per the non-residential software. And a central storage recirculation system for heat that uses a heat pump technology is not currently available to model. It's something that is in the works. But what we decided to do was model individual heat pumps at every single guest room, which is not a very likely scenario, but we had to model it going anyway, so that's what we chose. And some information on our energy efficiency packages. We had some envelope DHW and lighting measures, improved some of the windows for office and retail prototype. We added drain water heat recovery, reduced some minimum airflows and added economizers for DHW HVAC types of measures. We had a bunch of lighting measures. These kind of carried a lot of a load. And we can talk about more of those if there's questions. For solar PV, we just used a flat size across all the climate zones so that all the offices have 135 kW, and these were based on two limiting factors: how much roof area is there, and we used 50% of the roof area to size the PV. Or if there's plenty of roof area, we limited the size of PV to not over-generate electricity. We also installed a 50 kilowatt-hour battery. And then the preemptive efficiencies, we essentially increased efficiencies to somewhere close to the upper quartile of what's available on the market in terms of SEER, AFUEs, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so key considerations. So local reach codes have to have both a positive compliance margin and they have to be cost effective. There are going to be some negative compliance margins on the following slides, so I'm going to point those out. Unlike the residential software or that analysis, solar PV and batteries do not earn compliance credit. So the compliance margins you'll see for energy efficiency only will be the same as those with solar PV plus battery. The standard design, and this is also unlike the residential software, the standard design is defined by California Energy Commission for the HVAC and hot water systems remain mixed fuel even when the proposed design is converted to all electric. So this is particularly important when we're looking at TDV. TDV values electricity consumption more heavily than it does gas. So this is important consideration. There's a lot of assumptions. So these findings are specific to these scenarios that we analyzed and these prototypes in particular. So Then we have high efficiency runs for the climate zones in 2, 3, 4, and 12, particularly for this event today. But we are going to include the remaining climate zones in the final report. All right, here we go. So I'm gonna walk you through this color coding real quick. Oops. So the green here says we have a positive compliance margin and it's cost effective both in TDV and on-bill metrics. Yellow means it's got a positive compliance margin and one of those two metrics is cost effective, either TDV or on-bill. And blank, or white cells mean that either you have negative compliance or it's not cost effective using either metric. So what this table intends to do is, you can look at your climate zone and go across the row and say, okay, in a mixed fuel building, I have an 18% compliance margin that's cost effective for a mixed fuel building, and for an all electric building, that would be 11%. That's simply put. So this is for the medium office. I'm going to have 2 more slides just like this for the other 2 prototypes. And then lastly, down at the bottom, we have the average greenhouse gas savings across all the climate zones. So this is just one value to get the concept across. We found that everything's pretty cost effective with efficiency only. We got compliance margins up to 20% in the medium office. When you add PV, in the San Diego gas and electric climate zones, it might have been how we modeled it or how the rate we even chose in particular, but it was not showing cost effective on bill, which was interesting. The high efficiency appliances by themselves bump up the compliance margins about 3 to 5%, but not anywhere close to the 12 or 20% that you're seeing with the more expansive set of efficiency measures. So that's the mixed fuel. For all electric, when we just swap out the reheat systems with electric resistance, we have negative compliance margins in most places. And that's not surprising because TDV values electricity more heavily than gas. And what happens when we add the efficiency measures is that those actually are able to dig out of that hole, the negative hole, and get back up to be cost effective. So these are the compliance margins that could be achieved with an efficiency all electric building. Adding PV maintained cost effectiveness, and we actually saw that increasing the efficiency of these particular appliances didn't do enough to dig you out of this original hole that you were going to be in. It bumps you up a little bit, but not as much as efficiency. Keynotes are that there are, for example, 16% compliance margin, 16% greenhouse gas savings for the mixed fuel building, but slightly higher for the all electric building in terms of lowering emissions. For the medium retail, similar results, cost-effective compliance margins in all climate zones for energy efficiency plus PV, as well as high-efficiency appliances for the mixed fuel scenario. Somewhat surprising was that in the milder climates, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, we're seeing actually positive compliance margins with when you're transitioning from a building is something that operates mostly during the day and has, it can use a warmer outside air temperature during those times to heat the building. So that might be why you're seeing those results. There's not as big of a hole to dig out of when we're going to efficiency measures. So you'll see that the efficiency all electric buildings compliance margins for the retail are much closer to that of the mixed fuel. And PV is still cost effective in this scenario. And high efficiency appliance is also cost effective for the retail. So retail seems pretty ripe for efficiency, all electric, PV, all that stuff. And note that all electric buildings, when compared to the mixed fuel, generally have higher emission savings. So the small hotel results, a bit different than the other two prototypes. What we have here are the energy efficiency results for the mixed fuel building. We actually, it looks like this cost effectiveness, being cost effective only in one metric, appears to be tied to the utility rates that we chose. It is TDV cost effective in nearly all of these climate zones. Kind of surprised to see this. Maybe that needs to be updated. And when we add PV, we actually reduce in cost effectiveness for the small hotel. Again, this might be a combination of factors. The utility rates that we chose, perhaps the draw profile of the small hotel being different than the medium office and the medium retail, and how battery storage works with those different daily profiles that you're seeing in a small hotel. And again, the high efficiency only appliances, the preemptive appliances, get very little bump up. So this is where the central water heating component really shines, or shows its head. Is that with the federal code minimum, we have to run a 2.0 energy factor water heater, which you can't actually buy. That's the federal minimum efficiency, however. So that's what we had to model. That creates a pretty big hole that we have to get out of. The efficiency measures that we added some, it looks like maybe 9% in some climate zones. They were able to improve the compliance margin, but not close enough how much was necessary. And when you add PV, it doesn't affect the compliance margin. It does bump up the greenhouse gas savings into positive territory, which is looks good. And another reason why I think it's the heat pump water heater here is that when we expand to a high efficiency set of appliances, this is a 3.3 energy factor heat pump water heater. It has a huge impact on the compliance margin, right? We're making up 25% here. And the greenhouse gas savings are bumped up. So I think if we could model a central heat pump water heater with recirculation, I think that these results would be improved. And like I said, that's something that's coming down the line. Summary and conclusions. The medium office and the retail mixed fuel scenarios achieve higher compliance margins, but all electric buildings have higher greenhouse gas savings reductions. The small hotel was challenging to show cost effectively exceeding the state's budget, but there's uncertain precision because we have some modeling limitations right now. High efficiency appliances are very important to integrate into design, but they're not a panacea. The compliance margin was much higher with the efficiency packages that we explored. And currently, there are actually the baseline system types are part of a rulemaking, I guess you would call it, or there's a workshop happening for what the baseline system should be for these non-residential buildings. And if, as a result of docketed comments, those baselines change, then of course, the analysis will change as well. And lastly, reach code measure considerations. What we found is that non-residential buildings have a wide variety of usage patterns, process loads. There's a lot going on. And when drafting a reach code, it's important to keep all those in consideration. And either design to the building type or the building system. That's where the policy needs to be really focused on. You can lower GHG emissions by requiring higher compliance margins for mixed fuel buildings. That's what we saw. Higher compliance margins in mixed fuel, slightly lower for all electric, even though all electric had the higher GHG savings. We found solar PV to be cost effective, so increasing penetration of solar PV is beneficial. And these are just examples of how you might want to consider the all electric designs, like office and retail buildings less than 50,000 square feet. All rooftop packaged units installed should have heat pump capability, something like that. And yeah, that's all I got. Any questions?
Going all electric is some of the uses, like you have grocery labs, spas. In Berkeley, we have a lot of restaurants. Was there any modeling done on restaurants that are, so high on gas type and turning those new restaurants into electric or even?
That was not a focus. I think that's a very valuable focus to have, particularly the cookware or the cooking surfaces. Restaurants also have a lot of ventilation needs. They have a lot of exhaust, so having high capacity, high volume types of systems and exploring how readily available those are on the market, what the costs of those are, would be valuable. I agree. Really? No questions? Okay.
What's the shelf life of a cost effectiveness study?
3 years. 3 years if you enact it on the same day that the code was enacted, the statewide code was enacted. So January 1st, 2020 will be when the 2019 code becomes enacted. And if you adopt the REACH code before the end of this year, you'll have 3 years that you can have your REACH code be enacted. And Misty will get into more of this, I think, during her presentation. So every year there is a very concerted effort to increase the energy codes at the state level. And that's actually where we drew a lot of our research from. And we're involved with that. So I think that those discussions are happening, I would say. Thank you guys very much. I'm going to hand it over to Misty.